Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and I've got a couple bins here that have African night crawlers in them. African night crawlers that originated from northeastworms.com. And the worms that I originally received from northeastworms.com have been living in this container here for a while. But then they started getting relocated. I started moving all the adult worms out of this system into another box. Originally I started moving them into a small box, and eventually I needed more room, so they all ended up going into this one down here. And this system has been in service now for 110 days. It was 110 days ago when I first dipped into the container to start pulling out adult worms. I came back 3 times after that, 4 times total, extracting adult worms out of this system over here to populate this system. And it's my estimate that I've got 650 worms in here, or at least that's what I counted. I actually did count it. And I counted it on camera, so people even helped me count. And we corroborated my counting, and we pretty much came up with a pretty solid figure of 650 worms that have been repositioned into this system over here, all the big adult worms. And 10 days have passed since we last fed this thing. I figured we'd check in on it today and see how it's doing. So I'm going to get a glove on, bring the thing over to the bench, and we'll get to work. So now, if I wanted to compare this container with the container that these guys used to live in, the one that I'm trying to wind things up in, then we could use the age as an initial point of comparison, because this bin being at age 110 days, we can compare it to the other container, which was used as a composting bin for 111 days, so 1 day longer than this one would have been its final feeding. And after that final feeding, at least in my wormery, usually that's the start of what I consider to be the foraging phase. What the heck is that? It's like a little itsy bitsy fragment of the end of a worm. Almost as if something had been in here chewing on worms and leaving little fragments behind. This also looks like a decomposed dead worm. Maybe we've got a couple worms that have decided to come up to the surface to bid farewell to the world. Let's hope it's not an early sign of a issue. I mean, I don't smell anything unusual. I can certainly feel a good amount of dampness down here in this system. Everything feels nice and wet. Let's just get these pieces of newspaper out of our way so we can check how the system's coming along. There was some pretty yummy foods put in here last time we fed. And after 10 days, I don't know what to expect now that we're kind of in the winter months, and it seems like my tropical worms like these African night crawlers have started performing a little bit slower than normal, perhaps because of the cool temperatures. I think they are accustomed to somewhat warmer temperatures. I'm sorry, I'm just over by the paper coverings that were out here. The worms that were still stuck to it, a couple of them were trying to like crawl off the plastic over there. I just didn't want that to happen. So there was I remember there was banana and cucumber put in here, and then just as sort of a topping portion, perhaps more than what would have been necessary at that time, we took a couple whole fruits. One of them is visible over here already. It's the apple. And there was another whole fruit down on this end of the bin. There we go. Oops. And that's a straw that I keep bumping into here. The packaging on the straw says biodegradable or compostable or whatever it says, so I figure let's give it a try in the worm bin, but if it doesn't seem to make any progress, it might be a good idea to pull it out of here. I guess I had put these 2 frozen apple and kiwi, these frozen fruits in here whole, the way you see them, as sort of an homage to my outdoor worm bag. Because in my outdoor worm bag I had fed the same thing. I've got this little stash of frozen kiwis and apple in my freezer that have just been sitting around for forever, basically. And I had placed this into my, the same thing, a whole kiwi, whole frozen apple into the outdoor worm bag, and it just seemed like months went by. And I think the apple is actually still intact, has never even been breached in the outdoor worm bag. So this apple, after only a week, we wouldn't expect to see much progress. But I did promise myself that I wasn't just going to let it sit whole the way I did in the outdoor worm bag and let it go months and months that way. I'm going to help it break down. So I figured we would check to see what kind of progress it can make in 1 week, but then we would give it a good squish. Same with the kiwi. Try to do it in a way that I don't squirt myself with the juices, because they both seem pretty mushy and gooey. Here's some more leftovers. This is a banana peel. This was another banana peel. Last time I do remember us finding a good number of leftovers, and then we added the cucumber, and then we added the banana, and then we added the apple, and we added the kiwi. So there's no shortage of food in here. Here we've got the seed out of a mango. All kinds of leftovers, but I classify certain foods as kind of slow to break down, you know, like the tough, fibrous peel of a banana. They love it. They work on it non-stop until it's gone, but it's not gone for weeks usually. Apples, for whatever reason, seem to take quite a while in my worm bins at least. Here too, the husk as well as the seed inside the husk from a mango always takes a long time. Kiwi I don't have a lot of experience with, so when I find leftovers that are kind of all in that same general category of kind of slow to break down in the worm bin, I don't feel so bad giving them a little bit more stuff that's just going to break down pretty readily, and all I've got here is kind of a modest portion, anticipating that there'd still be leftovers so as not to make a huge glut, but I wanted to use it as an excuse to check in how they're doing, give them a little bit more food to supplement what's here already, and then let the process continue. But we definitely probably could have let this system go for a while longer without the need to give it more food. Besides all those food items that we've seen so far, all this abundant amount of bedding throughout the bin is also a food source. So these being African night crawlers like their carbon-rich bedding materials, so they'll be able to get by just fine even if they had none of these delicious fruits that I've been giving them. If they had only paper and cardboard, they'd probably get by just fine with only that. So let's see, what do we got here? Some leftover bedding type materials, paper and stuff. I've really kind of stacked up this side of the bin really tall, almost to the point where I've got to be careful that I don't spill stuff. I wanted to just get a sense of how many leftovers we've got in here. The game plan today was to not add any more bedding. You can see there's bedding everywhere, tons of it, and that's why I've got only food today. In my wormery, usually I'll use something around day 100. You know, when a bin reaches day 100, 100 days of age, that's when I start reconsidering whether I want to keep adding stuff like paper, you know, or leaves. Mainly the leaves, since they bring the little stick with each one, the little stem of each leaf. Things that I think are going to take a while longer to break down in a bin are usually withheld from feedings in the more mature systems. And now that this bin is at 110 days of age, I think I'm going to start treating its next few feedings as kind of like senior feedings. You know, not a lot of slow composting items, just easy to eat, soft stuff. And that's why I'm giving them potato peels and cabbage leaves. Potato peels are also kind of a slow thing, not maybe because, I don't know why, maybe there's some sort of a aspect to them that makes them resistant to breakdown. But I guess we'll just go ahead and we're going to plop the foods that they're getting right down into the middle here. Create a big gap for it and drop it all right in where we found it. I don't think there was anything else. We pretty much picked it all out. I mean, the only things I did find leftovers of are the things that you would expect to find leftovers of. None of the things that normally get consumed really quickly by the worms are anywhere to be seen. Stuff like the cucumbers and things like that. Those will go quick. So it's my assumption that these are the sort of things we'll come back in another 10 days and not find a trace of these. But we'll probably see the apple, we'll probably see the kiwi, but you know what? I think we promised ourselves that we're going to help these items break down. We're not just going to leave them in here. So I think the time has come to split this thing open. In fact, I'm going to grab a little handful of recycled bedding type materials from nearby that it can sort of ooze into and be easy to eat. Let's do the same with this apple. We'll put down a little layer of shredded paper, newspaper, cardboard, whatever I have is what ends up in this pre-made bedding mix that I've been using. And then here too, we're gonna open up this piece of fruit so that it becomes really easy to access it from all angles. No reason to be shy. Come and get it, right? So we'll plop in the fresh foods right on top of the old. And you can even see that what I'm bringing down here as the feeding for today, it's just a little addition to what they've already got. It's not a lot. And this bin is definitely well fed right now. There's no need to feed this thing, probably for another 10 days at least. Hopefully we'll start seeing some of those slow composting items, you know, pick up some momentum and start breaking down. And hopefully we'll also see some of this leftover cardboard and paper and bedding that's mixed in everywhere. See this stuff break down nicely as well. As I start to withhold fresh bedding, hopefully they'll just, you know, continue focusing on whatever residual existing bedding they've received till now. And luckily I've been super generous on bedding in all my bins lately. So that's why we're pretty high up, you know, as far as a bin would go after, I think this is its 13th feeding, or maybe it's 14th feeding already. So I definitely feel myself approaching the rim of these containers much more rapidly lately, that I've been very generous with the bedding. And that's good. I just think it'll add a little bit of extra time for the worms to be able to break it all down. But I think it's also contributing to, you know, giving them a really comfortable space. Plenty of area to roam around in and explore. This is another mango seeds husk. Almost just one half of the kind of clamshell-ish thing that we saw earlier. That one's, you know, further broken down than we've seen on any other ones that we bumped into earlier. So we did take a look at this edge. I'm going to do the same, just kind of give every portion of this bin a quick peek. It's this side of the bin over here that's kind of facing into the room, and the edge that I'm looking at right now is the edge that's up against the wall, where a little bit of the outside chilly air tends to come in, and might be making this end of the bin a little bit cooler, and maybe a place that the worms would prefer to not hang out in, but maybe I'm wrong. Seems like we're getting a pretty good number of worms hanging out over there. That's cool. I didn't know if maybe the difference in temperatures might be causing the worms to gravitate towards the warmer side of the bin, the side of the bin that faces into the room, but it seems like we've got a pretty good number of worms pretty much everywhere. Almost as if we didn't even see a concentration of worms in any one given spot. We checked all the in-progress foods that they've got. There were some worms there. We checked both of the far edges of the bin, furthest away from where the foods have been getting applied. There too, we found good numbers of worms. So they're pretty much everywhere, cruising around throughout the bin. The plastic coverings that we've had, you know, protecting the moisture from evaporating, has been doing a great job, because I don't think I even hit one dry area. So everything in here is really nice and damp. You might be able to hear it too as I'm squishing through here and moving stuff around. So it's a nice bin. It seems like a bin that the worms are probably pretty comfortable in, or at least that's what I hope. And I think from now on, you know, we'll try to maybe squeeze a couple more feedings into here. Usually I'll you know, try to get a little bit over a dozen if possible, and we're in that range now, so we can definitely stop if we wanted to and start steering this thing towards completion. But I think we've got a little bit more room remaining in here, so if we wanted to just keep using this as a compost bin for a little bit longer, I think we'd be able to do that just fine. So we'll just play it by ear. We'll see how it goes. This population will get enhanced a little bit further once that other bin that we saw earlier, the bin that they used to live in, finishes its migration. I'm rounding up the worms in that system, and they've been getting rounded up for the past 2.5 weeks, and they're actually coming together quite nicely. In fact, there's not many left out in the material at large, so I think the finished castings in that other system are going to be evacuated pretty soon, and once I've rounded up all the worms, they'll be coming in here to get reunited with their family and bring the whole population back together once again. So got a couple worms that are still hanging out here on the paper. Luckily I was able to fold it up and keep them from panicking. So I think most of them remained right where they were. I guess they were just reacting a little bit to the bright lights, but once I folded the paper over and darkened the scene for them again, they seem to settle right down. I don't see any worms out on the table or anywhere else, so no reason for concern. Alright, I think that's it. We've just got a couple things left here to cover up and clean up, but I'm not going to keep you around for that. That's boring. Before I go, though, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please remember to leave me a quick thumbs up. That's always very much appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching.